The moment I realized my wife was trying to replace me was when she brought her work colleague to Thanksgiving dinner wearing the exact same jacket her mother bought me 4 years ago. My name's Trevor Walsh. I run a renovation business in Portland, been married to Sophie for 6 years. She's a corporate attorney, her mother Barbara's a manipulator, and what happened next changed everything. If you're into stories about marriage betrayal and family drama with twists you never see coming, smash that like button and subscribe right now. Every single day brings completely new stories, and each one is more intense than the last. I was slicing the ham at the head of my own dining table, hands still warm from 3 hours of prep work, when Barbara decided to hijack our Thanksgiving. Classic move for her. She raised her wine glass like she was about to give some grand speech. "Everyone, this is Blake. He's a good friend of Sophie's from the law firm." I didn't look up right away. Just kept dragging the knife through the glaze, slow and steady. When I finally glanced over, there he was. Tall guy, maybe early 30s, wearing the sharp charcoal suit jacket. Had one of those practice smiles like he'd rehearsed it in the mirror. Barbara leaned forward with that look she gets. "Blake's got real drive. He's making waves in corporate law, not like some people who just renovate old kitchens." I didn't flinch. Just handed him the bowl of mashed potatoes and caught something familiar about that jacket. Same exact style Barbara bought me 4 years back, when she still thought I might amount to something in her eyes. "Potatoes?" I asked, keeping it simple. He reached for the bowl slower than before. "Sure, thanks." Sophie wasn't making eye contact with anyone. Just focused hard on cutting the turkey breast like it was brain surgery. "Blake," I said, tone casual as Sunday morning, "what brings you to a married woman's Thanksgiving dinner?" His spoon froze halfway to his plate. Katie, Sophie's younger sister, coughed into her napkin. Barbara waved her hand like I'd made some cute joke. Blake stammered. Sophie invited me. We worked together on some cases. She said it would be fine." "Sure," I said. "Lots of people say things are fine when they ain't." Quick note before we continue, drop a comment and let me know what state you're watching from, and let's get back to this story. I poured myself another glass of wine. Didn't look at Sophie, just sipped slow and let the quiet grow heavy. Then I said it, calm as anything. "I've been recording conversations in this house for about 4 months now, just in case tonight got interesting." Forks hit plates like hail on a roof. Katie choked on her wine. Blake gripped his fork so tight I thought he might bend it. Barbara did that fake laugh thing she does. "Oh, Trevor, don't be ridiculous." I looked straight at her. "Am I being ridiculous?" Blake was staring at Sophie now like he'd just figured out he showed up to the wrong party. Sophie finally looked up, not at me, but at the ceiling like she wished she could float right through it. "Relax," I added, setting down the carving knife. "It's not live-streamed or anything." More silence. Katie whispered something to Sophie I couldn't catch. I stood up, walked to the bar cart, and poured bourbon. Real bourbon, not the cheap stuff. "You know what's funny?" I said, leaning against the counter. "I almost canceled this whole thing. Figured maybe some people had other plans brewing." Barbara forced another smile. "Well, that would have been unfortunate." I knocked back half the bourbon. "Depends who you ask." I turned to Blake. "You comfortable here? Nice place, right?" He nodded, but it was delayed. His eyes kept darting to Sophie like he was waiting for some kind of signal, some rescue that wasn't coming. Too late for that. I dropped my napkin on the plate and wiped my hands clean. "Anyway, make yourselves at home. You already seem comfortable enough." Then I walked out of that dining room, left the knife right there by the half-carved turkey, and let them all sit with what I'd said. Let them think about it real hard because the game had started and I wasn't the one sweating. I was still standing by the bar cart, swirling what was left of my bourbon, when Barbara came back swinging like some kind of talent agent. "You know," she said, gesturing toward Blake like she was introducing a keynote speaker, "Blake's on track to make senior partner in under 4 years. His firm's expanding into 3 new markets. Big vision, big goals." Blake straightened up like he wanted to downplay it but couldn't help soaking up the attention. Sophie said nothing, just kept folding her napkin like it was her full-time job. Katie snorted into her wine glass. "He's got the ambition, the timing," Barbara continued. "Wants a big family someday. At least 3 kids. Some people still believe in building something that lasts." I walked back to the table slow, took my time chewing a bite from my plate. Let the pause stretch out nice and long. 3 kids is ambitious," I said finally, still chewing. "Hope you get your prenup sorted, Blake. Kids cost a fortune these days." You could have heard a pin drop in another county. Katie froze with her glass halfway to her lips. Blake's mouth twitched like he wanted to laugh but couldn't tell if I was joking. I wasn't. He glanced at Sophie, then over to Barbara like someone forgot to mention I was still breathing. "Funny thing," I added, voice steady as concrete. "When Sophie and I got married, she wanted to keep our finances completely separate. Said she didn't want to be one of those women who felt trapped by money. Her exact words. I shrugged, pushed my plate aside. So we signed a beautiful prenup. Airtight as a submarine. The house, my tools, the renovation business, it all stays with me. Barbara's smile tightened, but she kept that cheerful tone. That was years ago. People change their minds. Sure they do, I said. But contracts don't. Not unless both parties want to renegotiate. I looked at Blake. You like the house? Custom oak trim throughout, restored hardwood floors from 1924. Whole place rewired by hand. Took me 2 years. He nodded, not sure what to say. Well, technically Sophie rents it from me. I own it outright. Below market rate, of course, wouldn't want to hurt her pride. Katie looked up, laughing like I'd just told the world's darkest joke. You charge your wife rent? I smiled, wasn't my idea. That was Sophie's suggestion. Said it kept things clean between us. I've got the email thread to prove it. Sophie finally spoke up. That was a long time ago. 2 years, I said. Still counts. Blake cleared his throat and leaned back like his chair had gotten uncomfortable. I didn't realize you two were still living together. I glanced at Sophie, who suddenly found her water glass fascinating. Must be because someone painted a different picture. Blake didn't answer. Didn't need to. Katie cut in, trying to steer us somewhere else. Well, things seem to be working out fine. Maybe too fine. I set my glass down harder than I meant to. Fine is earned, Katie. Not handed out like party favors. Barbara jumped in fast. Trevor, this really isn't appropriate. I turned to her. When exactly is appropriate, Barbara? After Blake puts a down payment on a nursery in someone else's house? She opened her mouth, then shut it. First time all night she didn't have a comeback ready. I leaned back and crossed my arms. It's just wild, you know? All this talk about vision and legacy like I'm already in the ground. Like I didn't build half the stuff you're sitting on right now. Blake tried to say something, then thought better of it. Smart move. Sophie stood up suddenly. I need to check on the dessert. Let me guess, I said. Store-bought pumpkin pie. She didn't answer. Just left the room like it was on fire. I looked back at Blake. You're new here, so let me help you out. Barbara likes to audition men for her daughters like she's casting some TV show. She doesn't care about you as a person. She cares about how you'll look in the Christmas card photo. I took another sip. She tried to set Katie up with a cardiologist last summer, but he lived in Wisconsin. Apparently winter was a deal breaker. Katie rolled her eyes, but didn't deny it. Blake's hand was still on his fork, but he hadn't eaten anything in 10 minutes. You want to build something real? I said, start by asking what happens when the cameras are off and the house gets quiet. That's when the truth comes out. And if you're not ready for that truth, well, I tapped the table once. This isn't your stage. Blake looked right at me. I didn't come here to what? I cut in. To replace anyone, he said. It's not like that. Then what's it like, Blake? You show up dressed like a magazine ad, sit at another man's table, take compliments from his wife's mother, and act surprised when someone asks what your angle is? He opened his mouth, closed it, still gripping that fork. Keep watching to see exactly what Barbara promised Blake to get him here. You're not going to believe what comes next. Barbara jumped in, desperate now. Blake's a good man. He's thoughtful, reliable. Yeah, I said. Then he won't mind answering a simple question. I turned back to Blake. You planning on moving in here? Raising those 3 kids in a house another man wired and plumbed? Cooking in a kitchen you didn't pay for? Katie gasped. Barbara whispered, Jesus Christ. Blake looked down. I don't know what Sophie told you about us. She didn't tell me anything, I said. I've just been watching. I picked up my glass again. Didn't drink, just held it. Because now we were getting to the real show. Barbara tried to wave it all away like she was still running things. Leaned toward Blake with that fake bright voice again. Well, that's fine. Blake's working in commercial real estate development now. Real scale, real clients. It's not about small residential projects. I didn't even look at her. Just pulled out my phone and started scrolling through folders. Actually, Barbara, I said, eyes still on the screen. That sleek office building in downtown Portland where Sophie works. You know, the one you always brag about when you tell people how successful she is. I scrolled until I found what I needed. Contracts, closing documents, property records, electronic signatures. I turned the screen so Blake could see it. I own that building. Bought it 18 months ago through my LLC. Blake's face went slack. Wait, you're her landlord? Technically, I said. But I'm more interested in the 31% ownership stake I hold in her law firm through a structured investment that got funneled back to me through 2 different holding companies. Barbara's jaw twitched. That's impossible. I finally looked up. That's the thing about private equity, Barbara. You don't see it coming until the quarterly statements show up. Annual distributions appear under silent partner on the books. Sophie just never asked where they came from. Katie had stopped drinking entirely. Her hand was frozen on the stem. "So Sophie works for you," she said quietly. I laughed once, short and sharp. She just owns less of her own firm than she thinks she does. I let that settle. Then added, "But sure, she's free to keep Blake on retainer. Long as the rent gets paid." Blake blinked, completely frozen. I watched him do the math in his head, trying to figure out if he'd just walked into a law firm where the husband of the woman he was circling around controlled the building and held voting power on the board. Barbara wasn't even trying to hide the panic now. Her voice went flat, like she was trying to regain control of something that was already long gone. "That can't be true. She would have told us." I turned the screen toward her. Scanned lease agreements, notarized signatures, fund transfers, a whole stack of documents organized by date and labeled clear as day. "She didn't know," I said. "It went through an outside broker. Everything ran through a holding company in Nevada. I wanted it clean, professional, no emotion involved. I just saw an undervalued property, good tenants, and solid cash flow potential." I slipped the phone back into my pocket. "That building's tripled in value since I bought it, and Sophie's firm has been the anchor tenant that made it all work. She's good at what she does. I'll give her that." Blake finally found his voice. "But why? Why do all that and not tell her?" I leaned back. "Because I learned a long time ago not to mix business with personal feelings, even when she chose to do exactly that." Barbara snapped. "That's not what this is about. You're manipulating the whole situation." "No, Barbara," I said. "You just assumed I was sitting quiet because I didn't know what was happening. Truth is, I've been investing in Sophie's success for over a year, not out of sentiment, but because it made financial sense. Good location, strong client base, and Sophie works harder than most people I know." Katie spoke again, voice shaky. "Does she even know you own the building?" I looked right at her. "She will soon." The room felt like the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. Even the hum from the kitchen seemed louder. Blake reached for his water glass like it was going to save him. His hand trembled slightly. "This is a lot to process." I nodded. "Yeah, but it's not complicated. I saw an opportunity, I made smart investments, and now I have leverage. That's business." Sophie walked back in right then, trying to act like nothing had happened. She stopped in the doorway, saw everyone's faces, and froze like a deer in headlights. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Just talking business," I said. "Specifically yours." Her eyes flicked to Barbara, then Blake, then back to me. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing that isn't in your quarterly reports," I replied. "Though you might want to review your lease agreement before renewal time. Market rates have changed significantly." Katie coughed into her napkin again. Blake just sat there with his shoulders hunched. Barbara had gone full statue mode. "So what now?" Barbara finally managed, voice tight as a guitar string. "You think this makes you look like some kind of hero?" "No," I said. "I think it makes me the only person at this table who's been honest about where he stands. I didn't manipulate anyone. I signed contracts, made investments, got results." Sophie took her seat slowly. "You really own my building?" "Since March of last year. It's under Cascade Properties Holdings. Remember that guy who did the building inspection when your lease got renewed? That was my contractor." Her face fell, not angry, not surprised exactly. Just the look of someone realizing too many pieces had been moving behind the scenes while she wasn't paying attention. I let the silence hang there. Nobody knew what to say anymore. Even Barbara was out of ammunition. "Anyway," I said, picking up my fork again. "Y'all were talking about building legacies and creating something meaningful." I stabbed a piece of ham, slow and deliberate. "Just thought you should know I've been doing exactly that without the dinner speeches." Blake rubbed his forehead. "So you're not just the guy who renovates kitchens?" I smiled. "Oh, I renovate plenty of things. But I learned early that real power comes from owning the ground under the foundation." I took a bite and watched Barbara finally break eye contact. Watched Katie look away, like she didn't want to be part of whatever was happening. Blake didn't even reach for his plate anymore. Sophie didn't speak again, but she didn't need to. The numbers had already done all the talking for her. I set my fork down, leaned back in my chair, and looked straight at Blake. "Did Barbara tell you we were divorced?" He froze like I just pulled a gun. His eyes shot to Barbara, then Sophie, then back to me. She said he started slow and careful, that the separation was finalized, just not public yet. "And that you were—" He paused, swallowing hard. "Controlling, emotionally unavailable, and had fertility issues." I stared at him for a beat, then let out a short, dry laugh. "Fertility issues?" I repeated. "That's creative, I'll give her that." Sophie kept staring at her placemat like it might teleport her somewhere else. Barbara was gripping her wine glass like she wanted to crush it. Blake had just confessed without even knowing it. "Nah, man," I said. "I got lab results, blood work, full fertility panels, Everything's working fine. We just chose not to have kids. I paused, looked straight at Barbara. Because raising children with her involved would have been like setting up a daycare in a minefield. Katie let out a sharp breath like she wanted to say something, then thought better of it. Blake shook his head, looking like he'd swallowed something sour. Look, I didn't know any of this. Sure you did, I cut in. Let's stop pretending you showed up here for the stuffing. You're not stupid, Blake. He sat still for too long. His mouth opened like he might try another lie, but nothing came out. What did she promise you? I asked. Partnership track at the firm? Some handshake deal to get you in on family business connections? Barbara started to interrupt, but I held up one finger. Not dramatic, just a simple gesture like a judge calling for quiet. Blake shifted in his seat and finally let it out. I wasn't really here for Sophie, he said quietly. I came because Barbara said there might be business opportunities with the family. There it is. I leaned forward. You came for the deal, not the girl. It's not like that, he said fast. It's exactly like that, I replied. You walked in here thinking you were closing on something. Barbara used Sophie as bait and you took it. Didn't even check if the water was safe to swim in. He ran a hand over his face. Yeah, I made a mistake. No, I said, you made a choice. You saw a woman married to a man you thought was checked out, maybe on his way out, and figured you could slide in and grab a piece of the pie. You're not even the first guy she's dangled in front of us. Just the one dumb enough to show up for dinner. Blake didn't respond. Just stared at the salt shaker like it might start explaining his life to him. Barbara tried to recover. Blake is a respected attorney. He has every right to be here. Not at my table, he doesn't, I said. You lied to him, Barbara. Spun some fiction about my health, our marriage, your daughter's situation, and he believed it because it was convenient. Because he wanted a shortcut. Blake spoke again. I wasn't trying to take anything from anyone. You already did, I said. You took time, you took trust. You sat in a chair that wasn't offered to you honestly. Sophie opened her mouth for the first time in forever, but all that came out was, this has gotten out of hand. I looked at her. Just looked, has it? Or did it go exactly like it was supposed to until someone said the quiet parts out loud? She closed her mouth and looked away again. Blake exhaled long and slow. Look, I didn't come here to cause problems. You came here to position yourself, I said. Same thing, Katie mumbled Jesus under her breath. I turned toward Barbara again. So what was the plan? Get Blake set up with Sophie, ease me out quietly, then sell the whole successful family firm angle to your country club friends? She didn't answer, but her face said everything. That little flinch around her eyes, the way her jaw tightened. She'd thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. You built this whole fake narrative about a failing marriage to bring in some young guy with legal connections, I said. Fed him lies to make him think the path was clear, and probably told yourself it was all for Sophie's benefit. Barbara stood up suddenly, voice cracking. I was trying to protect my daughter. No, I said calmly. You were trying to control her. Same thing you've always done, just this time you showed your cards to the wrong person. Blake turned to Barbara, face pale. You lied to me about everything. She flinched. You wanted an in. I gave you the opening. At what cost? He asked. I raised my glass toward him. Welcome to the family dynamics, Blake. Then I drank and didn't say another word. Just reached into my back pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and set it on the table like I was reading a shopping list. Let's talk about Wednesdays. Sophie's head snapped toward me too fast. Katie shifted like she suddenly needed to stretch. Barbara's wine glass clinked when she set it down too hard. I cleared my throat. You haven't touched me in 4 months. Not even an accidental brush in the hallway passing by. Fine, people drift apart. But you opened a new checking account 2 months ago. I've seen the statements. Sophie didn't blink. Just stared like she was waiting for a meteor to hit and give her an escape route. Browser history shows you spent a whole evening comparing boutique hotels around Lake Oswego. Your firm's card was never used, but your personal account shows regular charges. Same hotel, same rate, same day every week. Katie coughed, but nobody was pretending to make small talk anymore. Every Wednesday, same place, room 312. You're predictable, Sophie. I'll give you that. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her knuckles went wide around her silverware. Client meetings? I asked, looking at her like we were the only people in the room. What? She said, blinking too fast. I tilted my head. The hotel bookings. Room 312 every Wednesday from 2 to 6 p.m. That's client work? Her lips moved, but nothing coherent came out. Because your assistant told me Wednesdays are your Pilates days, I added, flipping the paper over just for effect. Private sessions, remember? Except she mentioned you've been skipping classes for months. Said you outgrew the routine. Barbara shot up. This is inappropriate. I didn't look at her. So is planning to replace your son-in-law with a corporate lawyer during Thanksgiving dinner. That shut her up. Blake had started standing. Didn't say anything, just pushed his chair back and looked toward the door like it owed him an apology. "I didn't sign up for this," he muttered. I raised my glass toward him. "No hard feelings, but your reputation might take a hit if you get linked to this situation. I'd walk now if I were you." He nodded once, sharp and small. Understood, and just like that he left. No goodbye, no excuses, no glance back at Sophie. The front door clicked shut, and the sound echoed longer than it should have. I turned back to Sophie. "Room 312 must be some Pilates studio." She finally looked at me. Her face was stiff, but her eyes were full of something. Shame, fear, maybe regret. Hard to tell anymore. "You went through my computer," she said. "You left it open," I replied. "On the kitchen counter. You were in the shower, I needed to move the charger, saw your browser open to the hotel booking page. Figured maybe you were planning some surprise getaway for us." I took another sip. Turns out the only one getting pampered was you. Katie let out a soft gasp. Barbara looked like she wanted to throw her glass at my head. "You think I don't notice patterns?" I asked. "You think I didn't see the changes? The new perfume, the 40-minute drives you suddenly needed to clear your head?" Sophie's voice came out small. "It wasn't like that." "Wasn't what?" I leaned forward. "A standing massage appointment you couldn't reschedule? A support group for women who lie to their husbands and sneak around?" "Trevor," she started, but I cut her off. "Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to sit in your own house every Wednesday wondering if your wife's coming home with wet hair and a stiff neck from somebody else's bed? Do you know what that does to a man who built these walls, ran these wires, sealed these floors with his own hands?" Her eyes filled up, but I didn't care anymore. That part of me that used to get soft when she looked like this was gone. She'd burned it down for room 312 and someone whose name she didn't even have the decency to hide properly. I turned toward Barbara, who still had the nerve to be standing there. "This is where you defend her, right? Tell me it's complicated, that I emotionally checked out, that men don't understand women's needs." She crossed her arms. She was lonely. "And instead of marriage counseling, she picked hotel rooms and secret accounts," I said. Real mature approach there. "But sure, blame the guy who didn't chase her around Oregon with flowers and couples therapy brochures." Katie finally spoke up. "You don't have to do this in front of everyone." "Sure I do," I said. They sat through the rest of the show. Might as well see how it ends. Sophie pushed her chair back slowly. "I need some air." "You need honesty," I shot back. "And you've been running from it since June." She stood up, voice cracking. "This isn't fair." I nodded. "Fair would have been you saying you weren't happy anymore. Fair would have been a conversation instead of a hotel reservation." She walked out without another word. The room went dead quiet except for Barbara breathing like she'd just finished a marathon. "I warned her this would happen," Barbara muttered. "No," I said, standing up and tossing those printouts down like cards on a poker table. "You coached her into it." I didn't wait for her response. Walked over to the cabinet, the one Barbara always said was too bulky for the room, the one I built myself from quarter sawn oak, and opened the bottom drawer. Pulled out a small black flash drive, held it up so everyone could see. White label typed in caps, audio logs. The room didn't breathe. Katie froze mid-sentence she hadn't even started. Sophie, who'd stopped in the hallway when she heard the drawer open, looked like her heart had stopped. "Figured this might come in handy," I said, walking toward the living room TV. Bent down, found the USB port, plugged it in. The screen lit up. Black background, simple folder structure. Audio files, October, November. I clicked play. No video, just crystal clear audio. Cleaned up and boosted by my buddy Jake, the same guy who helped me set up the smart home system 6 months ago. The same system Barbara thought was just for playing music and adjusting the thermostat. Barbara's voice came through the speakers, sharp and confident and scheming. "We need to move Trevor out of the picture quietly. Sophie deserves someone with real ambition. Blake's young, connected, manageable. I can even help arrange some firm resources to smooth the transition." Katie was the first to move. Shot up like the couch had electrocuted her, stepping toward the screen like her body could somehow erase the sound. "This is sick, turn it off." But I was already clicking to the next file. Shorter one labeled kitchen conversation. Barbara's voice again, meaner this time. The version she saved for closed doors and empty wine bottles. Trevor's dead weight. He dragged Sophie down professionally. He'll always be small time. She needs someone who can scale with her career. The room changed. Like someone had flipped a switch. No more polite gasps or uncomfortable staring. Now it was all out there, burned into speakers loud enough to rattle the picture frames on the mantel. Blake, who'd been halfway to his car, stopped and came back to the doorway. His mouth hung open, but nothing came out. Sophie buried her face in her hands, elbows on the table, shoulders tight like she was bracing for a building to fall on her. Katie stepped back slow, like she was seeing her mother for the first time without makeup or filters. I looked at Barbara. She wasn't pretending anymore. Eyes wide, mouth open, every bit of her posture screaming panic. "Planning to replace me at my own dinner table," I said calmly, stepping closer to the screen. "Guess you figured nobody was listening." She lunged for the TV, hands out, wild and desperate, like yanking that cord would undo the last 5 minutes. But she didn't make it. "Sit down, Barbara." The voice cut through everything like a judge's gavel. Everyone turned. Katie's dad, Paul, was standing in the kitchen doorway. Not loud, not angry, just solid, like someone who'd been quiet too long and finally decided it mattered. Barbara stared at him, lips trembling. "Paul?" He walked over and caught her wrist before she could reach the TV. Not rough, not mean, just firm, like he was holding the last piece of order left in the room. "You're destroying this family," she said. Paul didn't flinch. I stepped forward, pulled the USB from the port calmly, slipped it back into my pocket. "No," I said. "I'm just letting everyone hear the family you already built." The screen went black. No credits, no music, just Barbara's voice still hanging in the air like smoke after a fire. Nobody moved. Katie sat back down like gravity had doubled. Sophie never lifted her head from her hands. Paul let go of Barbara's wrist slowly, deliberately. She didn't say another word. Not because she was sorry, Barbara doesn't do sorry, but because you can't argue with your own voice. You can spin emotions, twist motives, reframe conversations, but you can't undo the words that came out of your own mouth. Paul walked to the edge of the living room and stood with his hands behind his back, watching Barbara like he wasn't just seeing his wife anymore. Like he was replaying 20 years of dinner parties and subtle comments and all the times he stayed quiet when he should have spoken up. I took my seat again. No more documents, no more recordings, just me and the fallout of 4 months of planning. "You wanted a legacy," I said to the room. "Well, this is it." Nobody answered. Because what do you say when everyone just heard your blueprint played back at full volume? The silence after that recording wasn't just heavy. It was final. Then Paul spoke. "Enough." He didn't raise his voice, didn't move, but it cut through the air like steel through paper. Every head turned. Barbara flinched like she'd been slapped. Katie dropped back into her chair. Even Sophie looked up. Paul stood at the edge of the room, shoulders square, face unreadable. When he spoke again, his voice was dry and precise, like a judge reading a verdict. "You lied to me, Barbara. Told me tonight was about family, about making peace. Said we needed to gather everyone together and fix what was broken." He took one step forward. "Instead, you turned it into an ambush." Barbara opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Paul turned toward Blake, who was still frozen in the doorway. "Young man, my wife used you." "That was wrong. If you've got any sense, you'll walk away from this mess and don't look back." Blake nodded slowly, grabbed his coat, and left without another word. Then Paul turned to Sophie and his whole face changed. Didn't soften, just got focused like he was cutting through every excuse she'd ever made. "And you. Don't think hiding behind your mother's schemes saves you from responsibility. You let her run your marriage like it was some business merger. You let her speak for you, decide for you, lie for you. That's on you." Sophie's tried to speak but couldn't. Her mouth moved twice, nothing came out. Barbara found her voice then, sharp and desperate. "I was protecting this family." Paul reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder. Thick one. He dropped it on the table with a thud that made everyone jump. "You call this protection?" He opened it with surgical precision. Bank statements, account records, everything organized with colored tabs. He pulled out a statement and held it up. "Offshore account under your maiden name. Incremental transfers over 3 years, $38,000 at a time to stay under reporting requirements. Current balance as of last month, $1.6 million. Barbara's eyes went glassy. Her throat moved, but no sound followed. Paul wasn't done. "Shell companies under 4 different names, all routed through a legal trust in Delaware, which happens to be managed by the same firm your cousin works for." Katie made a small sound. Half gasp, half sob. Paul kept reading. "You drained money we built together. Money I earned, money I saved, money I trusted you to manage when I took that consulting buyout 8 years ago. All while standing in this kitchen preaching about loyalty and family values." Barbara's voice cracked. You investigated me." Paul shook his head once, slow. "No," I paid attention. "Something I should have done years ago." He slid the folder to the center of the table like evidence in a courtroom. His hands were steady, his voice didn't waver. "I had these records audited last month." Quietly. Wanted to be sure before I said anything. Barbara looked like she'd swallowed broken glass. Paul stood taller than I'd seen him in years. No tension, no fear. Like a man who'd finally reached the end of something and realized he wasn't the one on trial. "Maybe it's time I called a lawyer too," he said. That sentence hit harder than any recording, any confrontation, because that was the foundation cracking. That was the one person Barbara thought would never move, never speak, never choose truth over keeping the peace. Her whole body sagged like someone had unplugged her. Her eyes darted around looking for someone who'd still defend her. Nobody moved. Sophie didn't reach for her. Katie looked away. Even the walls felt too bright. Paul turned to me and gave one single nod. Not approval, just acknowledgement. Like saying, you're not alone in this anymore. And me, I didn't say a word. Just watched the empire Barbara built on lies and manipulation start cracking straight down the middle. No shouting, no chaos. Just facts laid out on paper, one document at a time. That's what made it final. She could argue feelings and intentions all night long. But paperwork, bank records, signatures, that's law. I stood up, no dramatic speech, no need to drag it out. Just reached for my jacket off the back of the chair and put it on slow, like a man packing up after the storm's already passed. Paul, I said, turning to him. Thank you. You've always been decent to me. Sorry it had to come to this. He gave me a firm nod. You deserved better, Trevor. That hit heavier than I expected. Not because I needed validation, but because it was the first completely honest thing anyone besides me had said all night. I started toward the door, but Sophie stood up like she'd been waiting for her cue. Can we talk alone? Her voice came out soft, desperate. I stopped near the hallway. Didn't turn around. You had months, Sophie. I gave you rope. You built a noose with it. She didn't reply. Nothing left to say anyway. My phone buzzed as I reached for the door handle. Pulled it out, checked the screen. Text from Blake. Thanks for the warning. I'm out. That family's toxic. Good luck. At least the man could read a room, even if it took public humiliation and recorded evidence to figure it out. Paul walked up behind me, not rushing, just steady like everything else he'd done tonight. He held the door open, then paused. That cabin up at Mount Hood, he said. The one Barbara always brags about hosting intimate gatherings every summer? Yeah, I said, raising an eyebrow. What about it? I bought it before we got married. Title's still in my name. She's just been borrowing the story. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a brass key on a simple ring, and handed it to me. If you need to get away for a while, spare keys under the planter by the front steps. I looked at the key for a second, then slipped it into my pocket. Appreciate that, Paul. His face didn't change, but something in his eyes settled. You gonna be all right? Yeah, I said. I've been planning this exit for months. All I had to do was wait for the right moment to open the curtain. Paul leaned against the doorframe, more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. You know that bookshelf in my office? The cherry wood one Barbara always claims came from some boutique in Seattle? I nodded. I remember it. Bought it from you, he said. 2 years ago, went through your website, paid in cash, told Barbara I found it at an estate sale. He shrugged. Didn't need her permission to buy good craftsmanship. That stopped me for a second. Seriously? You build things that last, he said. Even when the people around them don't. I stepped onto the porch, cold air hitting my face like a wake-up call I'd been needing. Glanced back once. Sophie still frozen in the hallway. Barbara slumped in the corner like someone had cut her strings. Katie looking ready to run. Tell Jake I'll be in touch, Paul added. Might be time I stopped pretending all my furniture came from catalogs. I gave him a nod. I'll tell him. Then I walked down those steps, past the gravel driveway, into the dark where my truck waited. Quiet and loyal like everything else I'd built with my own hands. Behind me, the house didn't collapse. Didn't need to. It had already cracked from the inside out. Everything left was just cleanup work. By the time I pulled into my own driveway, the truck engine was ticking in the silence. Headlights cutting across my workshop, illuminating the life I'd built that nobody could take away from me. Inside, the house was exactly as I'd left it. Warm, clean, mine. The second I set my phone on the kitchen counter, it lit up like a casino slot machine. Sophie, Barbara, Katie, unknown numbers. Block, block, block again. Turned on Do Not Disturb just to shut the noise down. This wasn't the time for backpedaling or damage control. You don't get to burn someone's trust and then ask if they felt the heat. I opened my laptop, clicked through the folder I'd been building for 4 months. Everything tagged, indexed, time-stamped. Recordings, receipts, property records, business documents, all of it organized and ready. Then I called Morrison, my attorney. He picked up on the third ring. Trevor, I was wondering when you'd pull the trigger. Yeah, it's time. File everything Monday morning. Full petition? He asked. Full petition. Make it airtight. Send me what you've got. I uploaded the entire folder to his secure server before we even hung up. 15 minutes later, he texted back, got it. You weren't kidding around. This documentation is bulletproof. Damn right it was. I poured a whiskey, good stuff, not the cheap bourbon, and sat at my kitchen counter watching the upload progress bar finish the last few megabytes. Phone buzzed again. Paul this time. You did what I should have done 15 years ago. I stared at the message, then typed back, still time. He didn't reply right away. Maybe he was thinking. Maybe he was packing. Maybe he was finally seeing the woman he married for who she'd always been underneath the surface. Another name popped up. Jake, my buddy who helped set up the audio system. Quiet tech guy. Lives downtown, doesn't talk much unless he's fixing something. He'd put together the whole smart home setup like it was no big deal. Just a few adjustments to the voice activation and cloud storage settings. He'd said, if they're dumb enough to talk near these devices, you'll hear every word. Turned out they were. Weekly, his message hit the screen. Got every conversation saved. Even the ones from August. Just finished the transcriptions? I typed back fast, thanks. Send them to Morrison. Then added, and back everything up off-site. He sent a thumbs-up emoji. Just like that, I had more documentation than most divorce courts see in a year. This wasn't revenge. I wasn't interested in burning everything down. This was cleanup. This was how you finish what someone else tried to start in the shadows. New Year's Eve. Cold, quiet night. No champagne, no countdown, just the steady hum of my workshop heater and the smell of fresh sawdust. I was putting the final coat of finish on a custom dining table for a client in Seattle. Solid walnut, hand-cut joints, the kind of piece that'll outlast the people who eat off it. Divorce papers were signed, sealed, sitting in a manila envelope by the shop door, ready for Morrison first thing Monday morning. No ceremony, no drama, just done. I poured a small glass of whiskey, neat, no ice. Took it to the bench where the table was drying under the work lights. Next to it sat a flash drive. Label read Evidence Archive. Not for show, just backup. Every recording, email, bank statement, property deed, the whole carcass of 4 months of lies, organized into folders like a museum exhibit. Right beside that, a thick notebook with hand-sketched designs. First drafts of a new furniture line I'd started planning 2 weeks ago, when I knew I wasn't just walking away. I was rebuilding from scratch. The Liberty Collection. Not just furniture. Statement pieces. Walnut, maple, steel, raw, and deliberate. Made for people who'd walked through fire and came out the other side saying, try me again. I wasn't just making tables anymore. I was making reminders. My phone buzzed on the workbench. Text from Blake. No hard feelings about dinner. Withdrew my interest in any business with their firm. You deserve clean air, man. At least he knew when to cut his losses. Phone lit up again. Paul, Happy New Year. You made the right choice. I looked at the message for a second, then put the phone away without responding. He knew I appreciated it. Some things don't need words. Outside, the first snow of the year had started falling. Quiet, steady, the kind that covers everything and makes the world look new again. I stepped outside, still in my work apron, sleeves dusty with fine sawdust, boots crunching on the frozen ground. No music, no fireworks, just clean air in my lungs and nobody pulling my strings anymore. I didn't look back at the house where I'd wasted 4 years trying to make something work with someone who was never really there. Just looked forward into the falling snow, into the clean night and the year ahead. And I smiled. Would you start over from scratch or try to salvage what's left? Drop your answer into the comments below. I read every single one. If this story hit home for you, smash that like button and let me know what you thought. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell to get alerts about new stories just like this one. Every week brings fresh drama, fresh twists, and fresh truth. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.